we are. And that's what Congress should be focused on. So with that, let's talk about what's going on in reconciliation. So before we go on to what's going on to reconciliation, I want to do a quick reminder of what's in there. What is actually being debated and what will get thrown out. The key things that I support: universal pre-K, permanent child tax credits. Universal pre-K means 3 to 4 year olds universally would have coverage to go to pre-K. Number one. Number two, permanent child tax credits. Now, these are child tax credits that people would get in the past as well, but they would get it as it was reconciled with their taxes at the end of the year. During this year, these child tax credits were instituted in a way where families with children under 18 years old would get a check for $250 to $300, depending on the age of the child, per month, credited directly to their bank accounts, or get a check in the mail every single month on the 15th of every single month. That is anywhere, so for a family of 2 children, that's anywhere between $500 to $600 coming in every single month. So that has a huge impact on something like grocery bills for a family of that size, right? So this would make this permanent for the foreseeable future. Then you have Medicare Expansion. And Medicare Expansion is there's two parts to it. One is today, 65 and older are eligible for getting Medicare. It would lower that age to, I believe, age 60. However, the most important part of this, it would expand to cover dental, vision, and hearing. Dental, vision, and hearing are what would be covered. Right now, if you are 65 and older and you've worked your entire life and you are in a low-wage job, you're living on a fixed income. So after Medicare, if you have any kind of dental issues, hearing issues, vision issues, you're on your own. You pay for that insurance on your own. You cover the copays on your own. You cover the deductibles on your own. Everything, you're on your own. So if you're on a fixed income, a lot of people cannot afford very expensive dental work. They can't afford hearing aids, so they go without. So imagine working your entire life and not being able to afford something simple, something that's so essential in your life, just to be able to function on a day-to-day basis. That's what this would do. Lowering prescription drug prices. So right now, Medicare is not allowed to actually negotiate prescription drug prices. So we in this country tend to pay anywhere on average 2.5 times more than any prescription drug, the exact same thing sold anywhere else in the world. On average. In some cases, we pay 10 to 20 times more. The EpiPen saga that you've heard of many times is a great example of that, right? We were paying up to $1,000 for 2 EpiPens, whereas it costs less than $10 to actually manufacture the amount of insulin. It's not the amount of insulin, rather, but the amount of medication that's in these EpiPens for any kind of allergic reaction, right? Less than $10. It was being sold for $1,000 for 2 EpiPens in the United States. That's a great example of what we're talking about in terms of lowering prescription drug prices. Then you have climate mitigation, right? So we have an entire world that is struggling in so many ways. We see climate change happening. We are not going to reverse climate change. We can only mitigate, but we're fighting over that too. You've got paid leave, paid medical leave for the first time for people who have never had it. So unless you work in a major corporation, you're not getting paid leave. If you work 3 jobs, work 60 hours a week, you don't get paid leaves because you're, an hourly wage worker. You don't get it. This would change that. And then finally, one that I'm really excited about is tuition-free community college, which is a game changer for middle-class families. Now, I know a lot of people love to say, college isn't for everyone, college isn't for everyone. And they're usually folks that have really nice bachelor's degrees from, high-end universities, well-known universities, making really great salaries, saying college isn't for everyone. But even tuition-free community college, which is the first 2 years, is extremely important for the success of our country. And here's why. In a lot of manufacturing jobs or skilled labor jobs, you actually need to go to training and classes. And many of those classes are taught in community colleges. So for example, if you're working in a manufacturing job, there's a lot of automation in manufacturing jobs these days. And so you need to be qualified to be able to actually operate some of this equipment. And so you can go get that training at a 2-year community college. But 2-year community college could also be a pathway to a 4-year degree for a lot of people. It could be 2 years of programming classes, and then they start to work, and then their work pays for the next 2 years. So then they graduate with a computer science degree. Because a lot of, tech companies, a lot of large corporations will pay for a lot of your college if you're doing it while you're working full time. So this is a huge opportunity for people to get their leg in the door into high-tech jobs, into skilled labor jobs, and into jobs that they would have never thought of. So this is a big deal. This is what's all being debated in the $3.5 trillion bill. Now, what are the hurdles? And I'll talk about it. We've heard about Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema being very opposed to this $3.5 trillion bill. We've heard they don't like the number. The number's too big. We've heard they want means testing. That's an issue. We've heard things like Senator Sinema being against the prescription drug price lowering provision in Medicare. And last week, and you can go check out the video if you want, but last week I showed you the mailers that were going out from Center Ford and on behalf of Kristen Sinema, mailers that were going out to Arizonians regarding her leadership on the bipartisan bill. Well, today this came out that Senator Sinema is rejecting a vote on the Biden package before infrastructure. So what this means is, as you know, Senator Sinema and Senator Manchin were two people that were very involved in the negotiation of the $1.2 trillion bipartisan, what they call infrastructure bill, roads, bridges, railway, primarily. So then she has tied her name to the success of that infrastructure bill. And Center Ford, which is, by the way, a well-known PAC that has sources of lots of dark money, specifically big pharma lobbyist money. It's directly tied to it. And you can look this up. This is public. Google Center Ford on Wikipedia. It has a lot of sources there about who runs that PAC. But they're sending out mailers, giving her credit for this bipartisan bill. So her reputation is tied very much to this bipartisan infrastructure bill. So she wants to see it passed. And there are lots of things in this $3.5 trillion bill she's opposed to, but she's not publicly talking about it. But she's made it very clear to the Biden administration what she would want and what she wouldn't want. And that's where we are. So I want to play you a little bit of a video of what is happening with respect to the $3.5 trillion bill. And just so you have it directly from Speaker Pelosi, let's see what she says.
Proceed. I'm very disappointed that we're not going with the original $3.5 trillion, which was very transformative. But in the whatever we do, we'll make decisions that will continue to be transformative about women in the workplace. So transformed because of childcare and universal pre-K, which sort of go together, the child tax credit, home health care workers. Men benefit too, but largely women, and women are those caregivers as well. So not only to free up women to go into the workplace for their own professions and interests, but also to recognize the work that women do in providing that health care, issues that relate to family and medical leave, and the rest. The Build Back Better is three baskets. It's climate, which we spent some time talking about already, health, jobs, security, and moral responsibility. It's health care, the issues that relate to the Affordable Care Act, Medicare and Medicaid, and family care. I mentioned some of those issues already. And so whatever we do, it will be transformative. It will produce results. And we are very grateful to our president for saying, I want to pass the bipartisan legislation on infrastructure, but I will not confine my vision for the future to what can be in that bill. Hence, we need the Build Back Better.
So there you go. So you heard her right now be very clear that the $3.5 trillion bill is no longer a $3.5 trillion bill. It's lower in some way. And she lists out all the things that are in there, just like I went over in a very short form. She talks about all these things. Some of those things can't be in there, possibly taken out. Now, there's two ways you can go about this. So I want you to think about what you would like to see in this $3.5 trillion bill, which is no longer $3.5 trillion bill. So first of all, the $3.5 trillion is across 10 years. Now, it's not exactly $350 billion every year. A lot of that money would be spent up front, and some of it would be spent down the line. There's two ways you can go about this. One, you can start axing pieces from all of these things that we want for working families. You can take out some of this and say, which is what's being negotiated, right? Okay, you've got universal pre-K, which is kids. You've got child tax credits, which is kids. You have some other, things for families like paid leave, etc. You get to keep one or two, or you get to keep one out of the three, right? You've got Medicare expansion. You've got lowering prescription drug prices. You can only keep one or none. So that's one way you can whittle down the 3.5 trillion to 2 trillion, 2.2 trillion, 1.8. All these numbers have been thrown out there. The other way you could do it is you could keep everything in there, but instead of guaranteeing it for 10 years, you could do it for a shorter amount of time. So you could do it for 6 years or 5 years. You pick a number and you could keep everything in there and then whittle down the number that way. Now, the advantage of keeping everything in there and cutting down the number of years is that 5 years later, let's say, for example, you could keep it for 5 years, half of the time, this would come up again, and it would be very difficult to take away these kind of programs that are huge investments in American families. Because what she basically said, what Speaker Pelosi is basically saying is that, look, right now, a lot of women are not going back to work because they have challenges with childcare. You have a kid that goes to school and all of a sudden they have to quarantine because someone got COVID. So now they're at home. How does that person hold down a job where she needs to be there in person? So not all of us get to work from home in jobs that can be done completely from home. Many people have to show up to work every single day in the morning. So if you're a wage earner and you have to get up every single day and go to work outside of your home, and you have childcare challenges, you're not going to be able to keep up with that job. You're either going to perform bad on the job, or you're going to perform really badly with your family. You're not going to have someone to take care of your kids. You're not going to be able to, basically give them childcare. So that's the point that she's trying to make. But the most important thing is that I want you guys to remember is that for every single dollar that we invest in education, specifically things like tuition-free community college, right? Universal pre-K, these things multiply in the return on investment in a large number. We can't even quantify what that's going to do in terms of growing our economy and really doing things for the bottom 50% specifically of American families. So this is a huge investment with a huge return on investment that we can't even fathom at this point. These things that are in this reconciliation bill, if we could keep all of them, even for a shorter amount of time, might be a better strategy to at least get all of them done on paper. Remember, the GOP tried to repeal ACA 22 times, give or take, over the past 4 years when Trump was in office. And they were unable to repeal it because even though the Affordable Care Act does not cover everybody, and even though the Affordable Care Act is too expensive for a lot of people to actually use and go see the doctor, which is a big problem, at least some people have coverage if they can afford it. That's it. Some people have catastrophic coverage. Some people are able to go get insurance even though they have pre-existing conditions. So they weren't able to take this ACA away because of that. And we would hope that if they can pass all of these things, even if it is for a less number of years, that we would be able to keep, these items in for a longer period of time. You couldn't take them away, and you would be able to renew them 5 years down the line, or longer. So that is the hope with the reconciliation bill. And with that, let's talk